Hey guys, Mike Toy Bonsai Boise. So it's mid-September right now, and if you're anything like me, you're bored out of your mind because we spend all summer working on our trees and trimming them and repotting things in the spring, and now this time of year there's nothing to do. You can't trim them because they're gathering energy for the winter. You can't repot them for the same reason, so I find myself just looking for things to do. And so I end up doing these weird little experiments where I try to fuse different trees together, and build a little, makeshift kind of greenhouse kind of thing. So I've really been experimenting with aerial roots and that kind of thing lately. So I'm going to give you a look at some of the crazy little experiments I'm doing. Some are not very brag-worthy at all. They're just experiments. So come with me and I'll show you. First, just a quick look over the balcony. It's a nice evening. A little after 7 o'clock. Not too much smoke, but some nice pleasant evening. So over here on propagation station, you can see I've got cuttings galore, and this is maybe half or a third of what I had a little bit ago. I went and got some of these little plastic greenhouses. Let me move this guy somewhere else. Because I've been trying to produce some aerial roots on these ficuses and scheffleras, and so far I have not had any luck. I'm going to turn the flash on since it's starting to get a little dark. Yeah, so no aerial roots yet, but I don't expect any this quick. Actually, I take it back. That one right there, that's the one aerial root I've produced so far. But that's it. So the idea here with this is just like a little $10 plastic greenhouse. It's not even meant for trees this size. It's meant for seeds and that kind of thing. I'm just keeping it humid and hoping that will help the tree produce aerial roots. And by keeping it humid, I'm not overwatering the actual soil. I'll just mist it. I'll grab this guy here, open it up a couple times a day, and just mist it. Aerial roots are somewhat of a mystery to me because I live here, in Boise, Idaho, where it's dry and desert, and so aerial roots have a hard time producing here. But anyways, that's the idea with this greenhouse. So got everything in shallow pots, thinking that if I can keep the soil on the semi-dry side and keep it humid all around the tree otherwise, that will tell the tree to start producing roots out of the branches and aerial roots to gain moisture. So that's the idea with these. Now, as you can see from the height, it's not very tall. It sure looked a lot bigger when I bought them. But that's the height. So it's already hitting the top. I'll show you on a lot of these. You see, it's like hitting the sides and edges, and so I had a couple others that were too big to fit in there, and so I just built my own. So this is the lid from one of these, and that's the bottom part down there. And I just got some PVC pipe, rigged it all up, and then this is just a shower curtain, just a plastic shower curtain. Wrapped it around, put the cap on, and same deal. I just spray it 2, 3, 4 times a day maybe, keeping it nice and humid. So it's kind of a, it's a makeshift. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a rigged up greenhouse effect is what I'm trying to do. So this one did have some aerial roots to start with. If I can get in there, you can kind of see them there. I had a head start, so I'm just trying to accentuate them a little bit more, get them to produce more. So yeah, that's a look at those. So let's go inside. I'll show you some other little experiments that I'm working on. All right, so I've got a whole bunch of things that I brought in, big hodgepodge of different experiments. So I'll get to them one at a time, but I'll start with this one. This one actually took me the longest. And I've got a video on what I did here and how I did it, how I put it all together. So I'm gonna make this part 1 of my random experiments, and then I'll do part 2 as just this one tree thing alone. So, but let me give you a little brief on this one. So this one I'm going for, I don't know if it's penging style or banyan. I think banyan is when you got a lot of aerial roots coming down. I got to look up the actual definitions of them again. My impression is that a penging style bonsai is kind of like a messy clump of things, almost like a forest style, but not as well trimmed and pretty, and it's more just kind of messy, like how nature would do it. Now I'm probably butchering the definition of that, but that's my interpretation and what I think I read about it. Banyan style is kind of similar. It's like a grouping, but with a lot more aerial roots. So you get like a grouping of trees with lots of aerial roots. That's what I'm going for here. And all I did is I just took a whole bunch of ficus benjamina cuttings. I put them in a bonsai pot, took a bunch of these shish kebab sticks, stuck them all around, and then I wrapped it in plastic. The idea behind this was to help trap some moisture and humidity in there. I didn't have any greenhouses put together yet when I did this, and it's such a weird, kind of awkward shape that, I wouldn't have a greenhouse that it would fit in anyways. Keep in mind, these are all just on my balcony out there, so space is a big concern. But anyways, like I said, I'll post the full video of how I put this together in a part 2. But yeah, something between a penging and banyan style is what I'm going for here. So that's a look at this guy. Let me show you another random experiment I'm working on. All right, so here's another one that I put together. And this one is kind of a penging style. It's messy looking. It's meant to be messy looking. And all this one really is just a bunch of, again, ficus benjamina cuttings. And I just stuck them in this pot without any real thought at all as to placement or anything like that. And what I'm going to continue to do when I get cuttings is just stick more cuttings in there. Some of them will die off because they're not getting enough light, they're being crowded, or just whatever other random reasons kill off cuttings. Some of them will not. It's just gonna grow at its own natural, in its own natural path. So I'm gonna give it very little guidance as far as what it does, other than I'm gonna keep it trimmed kind of in shape just because I don't want a giant bush around. But yeah, that's kind of the idea here with this one. So there's really not much to it. Most of these you're going to find they're not that exciting. They're not, in depth or intricate. These are just random, fun little experiments that I do with cuttings that I have because I have so many ficus benjamina cuttings. I've gotten pretty good at getting them to live. I kind of know how to do it now. So I end up with a whole bunch of them and nothing to do with them. So I just try these little experiments. So as I fill this with more cuttings, and as time goes by, what I'm thinking / hoping is going to happen is it's going to get its own, natural leaders and aerial roots because it'll be so crowded in here that it's going to help trap moisture and humidity. And, after, who knows, 5 years, 10 years, it's hard to say, maybe we'll get a nice little penging, messy, naturistic looking bonsai in there. So that's it right there for that one. Let me show you kind of what I've been doing with cuttings too, because kind of found a new way to help produce aerial roots, or at least help give them a good start. So let me show you. So these 3, well, the reason I picked these 3 to show is because, as you can see, I've wrapped around the trunks here, trying to fuse them together. You can see this one is clearly doing much better than this one. And this one seemingly has nothing to do with them, but that's what I'm going to show. So my way of getting cuttings to take root and being successful with them has changed. So what I do now typically is when I take a cutting, I put it in a bottle of water. I leave it by a windowsill where it gets medium bright, indirect light. I leave it there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And this is in the growing season, spring, summer, even, into early fall. From there, whether it has roots or not, I take and I put it in soil. They typically still survive. Just from sitting in water for a couple of weeks, it softens it up, gets them sort of ready to start producing roots, and they're such prolific growers as it is that they typically take root after that. Now, I'm sure some people are looking at this going, why do you put it in such a skinny, tall, deep pot? That's the opposite of bonsai. And true, it is. But I have also learned that by doing it this way, you heighten the chances of success with cuttings in general. This is an elm. I'm actually not sure if this is a Siberian elm or a Zelkova, Japanese elm. I don't remember now. But whatever the case, they root very easily too. But when you put it in a shallow pot, you're only given the stem or the trunk this much chance to take root. Whereas you put it in something like this, you're giving it this much chance because roots can sprout from anywhere on there. So I do the same thing, putting it in water first and then put it in one of these. And then from here, good. So you can see it's got roots. So from there, once you see roots, and you can tell because it's clear plastic, oftentimes, not this time, looks like I'm a liar, can't tell, except at the very bottom. Once you can see roots, then you can transplant it into a bonsai pot or a different pot if you want, but that's the process and those are the steps that I take in order to get to that point. So that being said, that's why you can see this one is growing so well. Let's see if we see roots. Oddly enough, I don't see roots out of this one yet. I know it's got them, but I don't see them in there. Maybe if I shine the brighter light on it, I would see it. But so these two guys here, the difference is this one I put in water bottles first, let it sit for 2 or 3 weeks, then put them in individual little pots like this, maybe even half of this size, and let them actually take root and really get going. This one I didn't. This one I just took cuttings, stuck them in the pot, wrapped them together. It's been this way. It's kind of barely hanging on, kind of not, I don't know if it's going to make it or not, but so you can see the difference in health and how they do just by doing it that way. Letting them soak in water for a couple weeks first, then letting them take root in soil, then put them all together. Hopefully that one fuses together fairly nicely. As you can see, I've given it no attention to any kind of structural stuff. I'm just letting it grow. So the more it grows, the thicker it gets, the more that's going to fuse together. So I can already feel that's pretty tight, which is good. So from there, let me show you this little guy over here. What am I doing with this little thing, you might ask? So this little guy, it's just another cutting, just like one of these. I've got a million of them. But all I did is I bought a, gosh, this was probably 50 cents maybe, just a little saucer. Drilled some holes in the saucer, turned it into a little training bonsai pot, and put that tree in it. The idea with this and all the others, really, the main theme to this whole thing is getting aerial roots. So while yes, I'm talking a lot about cuttings and how to be successful with that, what I'm really doing is I'm trying to produce aerial roots. I've yet to find a successful method other than just occasionally they do sort of by accident. And again, you may not have that problem. You may be somewhere like down south or in Florida where it's very humid and aerial roots are easier to produce. Here it's very hard, so I've been trying different things. So the idea here is by growing these trees in a very shallow pot, it eventually will run out of room. The roots will run out of room and either come out, and I'm gonna eventually put it on something and then maybe some soil down here or water. I don't know how I'm going to rig that up yet, but the idea is that it will run out of room, the roots will grow out and look for moisture elsewhere. That will also trigger the tree to start producing aerial roots if it is in a humid environment. So that's the idea behind these. I've got 2 or 3 like this, and I've got 2 or 3 in actual clear plastic saucers like this where I did the same thing. So that's what I'm going for there. You know, just trying to get aerial roots and using cuttings as the experimental fodder for that. So let me show you one other method that I'm about to try to get aerial roots, and then I'll kind of show you some of what I do for growing seeds. All right, so here's one that I did maybe a month ago. These are just tiger bark ficus cuttings that I had a bunch of these, not as many as I have of the ficus benjamina, but still have quite a few. Plenty to play with, put it that way. And kind of the same concept that I did here, where I just took a saucer, although a bigger one, drilled holes in it, put soil in it, and then put a bunch of cuttings in there. Some were rooted, some were not. Surprisingly, they all took. None of these died, actually. I must have timed it just right. And the idea here again is just to get this sort of penging / banyan style. I'm just going to let it grow. You can already see new growth here. So they've all taken. This has been at least a month, so yeah, I'm just going to let it go. I've got some sphagnum moss on top, kind of the decorative type, but it still helps hold moisture, so I'm hoping that'll help produce some surface roots. I just want it to grow wild, kind of like ultimately I'm going to go for this sort of wild, in the jungle kind of look. Like if you're just going through Vietnam or Cambodia and came across a, old temple or something. Nigel Saunders actually has some great examples of that. So this is not as nice as his, but it's just a start. It's really just to focus on my methods for beginning something like that. And, highlighting what works versus what doesn't. So got high hopes for this one. I'm really happy that they all took, and kind of curious and excited to see where it goes. I spend so much time developing single trunks that I haven't really done these banyan penging styles. So pretty curious to see how it goes. Okay, so this is the one that I've always called my work bonsai. I now work from home, so it's my work from home bonsai, I guess. I kind of like it. In fact, I like it a lot. Structurally speaking, it's the most unorthodox looking, incorrect thing you could imagine. I mean, we got this branch here that's just way bigger than it. It's just, none of it makes sense, but that's kind of what I like about it, is it's just sort of raw and it just does whatever it does. And that's fine. I give it a little guidance, and someday I will have to correct a lot of these things, but no hurry. So what I'm going to do here, this is a straw. I've got some sphagnum moss. So I'm going to make a little cut. I haven't decided where yet. I'm thinking maybe here or maybe here, but I don't know which. I'm going to make a little cut on the branch. I'm going to fill this straw with sphagnum moss. It's kind of like an air layer. And I'm just going to stick it. I'm going to make a little cut so that there's a groove in the head of that straw where it fits right onto that branch. And then what I'm hoping is that it produces roots that will go down into the sphagnum moss and into the soil. Now from there, I have to do a little more research on how to eventually take the straw off without killing this tender little root in there. But I'll figure that out. Even if it might have to be a slow process, I might have to just take it off just a little bit at a time, let it harden up, get used to the air, and then just do a little more all the way down. Just take like a scalpel and just take it off. So that's another way that I think I'm gonna try doing some air layers. We'll see. Yeah, that's the idea. I just can't decide where yet, that's the only thing. I don't want it right here in the middle, blocking the trunk. I'm thinking either there, over there somewhere, but the straw is not quite big enough. I can figure something out. I can add some more soil down here if I have to, just to build up a little mound. And that would actually be a good spot, like right there, if I can do that. So we'll see. I'll take some footage of that and, let you know how it progresses along the way. So last but not least, let me show you my method for planting seeds that has been very successful for me, and it's about the easiest way imaginable. So let's look. Okay, so let me show you how I sow seeds. In here, I've got a whole bunch of Amur maple seeds and a couple of oaks. So there's an Amur maple tree outside of the gym that I go to. This is where I get all of my Amur maple seeds. Every Amur maple I've ever had has all come from seeds from that tree. So here they are. If you look up online how to sow seeds, you'll see a whole lot of fancy instructions on, you get them wet, wrap it in a paper towel, put it in the fridge for 2 weeks or whatever it is, and then that's great. I mean, I'm not saying that those ways don't work. They've never worked for me personally, but I probably just did it wrong. But there's a lot easier way. All I do is I'll take some seeds. So maybe, I don't know, let's take like 3, for example. You don't even have to really do anything to prepare them. As I throw one over there. I put them in there. It was about halfway full with dirt. Filled it the other half, and then I put it outside in fall for the year. I'm gonna let nature do the rest. And so far, nature's always done a better job than I could ever do putting them in the fridge and doing all that other fancy stuff. So that's what I'm gonna do with these oak seeds here too. I'll put them both, now I'll do one in each one since they're oaks after all. Like so. And the soil, by the way, it's all part of the same ecosystem. This is used soil, but not very heavily used soil. I'm gonna set these over here so I don't mix up the oak with the Amur maple. I'm gonna label these, I'll make a little mark or something. But yeah, the soil is from the cuttings that I used earlier. So after I take the cuttings out and I put them in these pinging style and banyan style and whatever, I just throw that soil, which is still pretty good and relatively new, into a bucket. And then that soil I use for the seeds, just like that. And that's really all I do. Just like so. All right, guys, so that's it. That's what I've been working on, just experimenting with cuttings and seeds and just whatever else, because this time of year, not much else to do. So I hope I didn't offend any pinging or banyan style experts out there. Didn't mean to. I'm still learning the difference between the two, and they're somewhat similar, I think, so I get them mixed up sometimes. So I'm not an expert on either of them by any means. So anyways, I'm learning more about them, and as I learn, you'll learn. I'll post it on here as I go. So thanks for watching my crazy little experiments, my little Frankenstein trees and Frankenstein greenhouses out there. Like and subscribe, and if you've got any feedback that you think will help on any of these, feel free to leave me some comments. Thanks, have a good rest of your night.